Allen & Company wishes OOIDA and all members a safe, healthy, and joyous holiday season.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
We've been taking a look at the biggest headlines in trucking over the past 12 months, and the focus on driver pay and driver retention has been a recurring theme throughout 2024. Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine helps us break it down. OOIDA gets calls daily about broker issues, so we'd like to round up some of the topics involved, such as carrier tracking, harassing phone calls, and more. I'll chat with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And finally, the move by EPA and CARB to move trucking toward electric vehicles has generated a lot of concern. Several states are following California's lead, including Oregon, where efforts are underway to delay or stop the regulation. I'll talk with Oregon State Representative Shelley Bosshart Davis. And now, here's Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. We have been, over recent days, taking a look back at the biggest headlines in trucking over the past 12 months, a year in review of sorts, from freight rates and autonomous trucks to emissions regulations and more. But I could make a case for this being the biggest because it's all-encompassing. The focus on driver pay and driver retention has been a recurring theme throughout 2024 because its ripple effects extend out everywhere within the industry. Here to discuss, Mark Schremer, senior editor of Landline Magazine. Mark, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me, Scott.
We could go any number of ways with this, but I'm going to start with kind of an open-ended question for you with regard to this issue. What makes it, the driver pay, the driver treatment issue, a top story of 2024 for you?
Well, I mean, you know, it starts with everything in the industry, and it's no secret that I'm a huge baseball fan, so I will use the, if you pay them, they will come, as opposed to the field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. If you want to say that there is a driver shortage or there's a driver retention problem, countless studies have been out there from the Department of Labor, various researchers on this. There is not a shortage in the trucking industry. There is a driver turnover problem. There is a driver retention problem. And those things could be fixed by paying the drivers correctly, treating the drivers correctly, respecting them. I know previously another one of the stories from this year was talking about restroom access. So treating the drivers well and paying them well, you have a healthy workforce. It's pretty simple as that.
And it has been a recurring theme throughout the year. We've seen the overtime bill in Congress get introduced and pick up support throughout recent months. We've seen conversations in different task force meetings, like the Truck Leasing Task Force. Every conversation, as you kind of point out, dealing with the challenges within the trucking industry truly do come down to the way truck drivers are treated, whether it be pay or just basic things like restroom access. Yeah. It is a recurring theme, and I take it as an encouraging development that it is part of the conversation more and more, it seems, throughout these different types of things that are happening.
Yeah, and another thing that's encouraging is that it is a bipartisan bill in the House. I think it's maybe 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats on the
overtime bill.
On the overtime bill. So we have, and basically, to give a kind of refresher on what the overtime bill is, I think it was all the way back a provision from 1938 that said that motor carriers were exempt from paying company, employee truck drivers overtime wages. And the reason at the time, the thinking was that not giving overtime pay would discourage truck drivers from working excessive hours. That, I'm going to work 80 hours this week because I'm getting paid, time and a half for all these hours over 40. So I'm just going to be out on the road, and it's going to create a dangerous situation and all of that. So we're going to discourage that by not having overtime pay. Well, the reality is here we are, getting ready to enter 2025, and truck drivers are working 70, 80 hours a week. They're doing that all the time, and they're their wages are more reflected in what would be like a 40-hour work week. So it has not worked out. Where we need to get, if we really want, a vibrant and robust and qualified drivers that getting in line that want to be a part of this industry and drive safely, is we have to value all of a truck driver's time, and that is not happening. We have the paid by the mile system. If the wheels, you're not earning if the wheels aren't turning, is the common phrase that is used on there, and we have to get to a situation where realize that this is a safety issue. If drivers, if all of their time is being rewarded and compensated, there's less desire to I'm tired and I shouldn't drive, but I really need to make those extra dollars. I need to get those extra miles in, so I need to go. If you know that you're going to be paid, then you can go, no, I'm tired. I need an hour off the road right now. I need to stop at the truck stop. I need to get out. I need to stretch my legs. I need to get a coffee. I need to do whatever I need to do, and then I can get back on the road. If you're being compensated for all of your time and you have flexibilities within the hours of service, you can do these things, and it's actually something that would be beneficial to highway safety, and we really need to look at that.
Well, and to extend that out too, you're going to have less turnover if you're doing that as well. You're going to have more experienced drivers on the road, which translates to safer drivers on the road.
And what has FMCSA over the past couple of years said repeatedly? That they said that they have data that shows that the experienced drivers are the safest drivers out on the road. And so if you have driver turnover and you're just doing things, even that you're putting in new mandates or requirements that is taking a safe 10-year driver, they're like, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm turning in the keys. I'm done. They're being replaced by somebody that's gone through probably really quick through a driver training school, and they're out on the road, and now they're first-year driver, and the data indicates they're much more likely to have a crash. It is a detriment to highway safety.
Here's my fear in 2025 moving forward, because we've seen this conversation pick up momentum, I think. But if the freight recession truly does end in the coming months, rates go back up, the awareness kind of wanes, people are happier, they're working, and we're right back here again the next time things turn downward. I hope the conversation continues. Is my point.
I do too. And real quick, I know we're running out of time, but President Trump, one of the things that he campaigned on was this idea of no taxes on overtime. And OOIDA, I think, has been doing a good job getting the message that, hey, truckers wouldn't be eligible on that because of the fact that they don't get overtime. So that might be a thing. If that's something that President Trump pushes for, that might be a way to keep this in the conversation and maybe have some steam going in to the next session.
We need all the steam we can get. Mark Schrimmer, we appreciate your time. We'll see you again in 2025.
Hey, thanks, Scott.
Mark Rettig, we'll toss it back to you.
Thanks, Scott. The OOIDA Foundation is accepting applications for the OOIDA Mary Johnston Scholarship. You can find more information or apply at OOIDA.com. Go to the main menu at the top left of the page, and under Foundation, click on Scholarship Program. The deadline is February 1st. Starting Friday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the Petro in Amarillo, Texas. That's located at Exit 75 on Interstate 40. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, I'll discuss broker problems with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. We'll be back in just a moment with more. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. We spent a lot of time on the program over the years talking about broker issues, and OOIDA gets calls daily about the topic. So we'd like to do a quick roundup of some of the topics involved. Here was some advice and information on that and more are Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark. Glad to be here.
Well, glad to have you, and this is kind of a little broker potpourri, which sounds like the worst potpourri in the world. That's not the stuff you want to put in your bathroom to make it smell better. Let's talk about one of the ones that I think has come up a lot, and I know I've noticed in notes from your department that it does. Carrier tracking. A lot of brokers are requiring this in their contracts. And why is this a problem in particular for the carriers?
Well, I mean, so they want tracking. They want to, the brokers want to keep track of exactly where the load is. Well, you would think that would alleviate check calls. No, it doesn't seem to alleviate check calls. They still want to do check calls. They still want to wake drivers up during their sleep time and get pissed off if they don't answer their phone and reply to them. And also the tracking issue, one of the biggest issues I have with it is that they fine you if the tracking fails or you lose service. Maybe your phone goes dead. Who knows? They want to fine you and throw out a $250, $400 fine, whatever. There's one broker out there in particular, I'd love to name them, but I know you wouldn't want me to, that has a 20% reduction of your rate if the tracking fails. And funny thing is, I think that broker causes that tracking to fail on occasion because, hey, it bumps their revenue up.
On occasion, it seems like every phone call I get fails. I can't say it's 100%, but I can say 100% of my phone calls, it fails.
Yep, I agree with you.
That would seem like something that if you documented enough, you could show a real problem there. But, showing the problem and getting anything out of it are two different things.
That is true. I mean, and we have looked at that, and, the problem is it's a single motor carrier it happens to here, a single motor carrier there, a single motor carrier there. And, motor carriers, when they're one-truck operations, tend to be independent, people that kind of they'll take it on the chin and just keep on going. And, if everybody said hell no, it wouldn't happen. But, as soon as one person says hell no, you got three other people coming up to undercut their business.
Well, and I think a big thing too, right, is this is privacy issues that these small carriers have, right? All our calls, privacy, they want your data. This is popularized, in 2024. Everything's a digital space nowadays. Your data is important and it's valuable.
Yeah, no, I agree. The ELD companies, I mean, the data that they get that they can bundle up, and I believe do. Some of them bundle that up and sell that data. You know how valuable that would be for a broker to know where all the trucks are?
Oh, God, yes, yeah.
So that when you call in and you're trying to negotiate a rate, they already know where you're at.
There's 500 trucks up here. I was going to post this rate for this amount of dollars. Now I can post it for this because I know it's going to get taken.
Yeah.
They can dictate the rates. That's scary.
It is. And I tell folks when you're negotiating a rate, so you find a load that's going to take you home, right? You don't tell the broker, I really want this load because it's going to take me home, because he's going to try to lowball you then.
Oh, yeah.
But when they already have that information, I mean, it's, and if I recall correctly, back when the OOIDA was fighting the ELD mandate, and we fought it for a long time. I mean, without OOIDA fighting
it from happening for a long time.
Yeah, I think you would have had ELDs back in the early 2000s without OOIDA fighting it. But
yeah.
Nevertheless, our biggest issue was privacy. driver's privacy, carrier's privacy, autonomy. Just everybody. If everybody knows all your bargaining chips, they're all on the table. Well, what do you got to bargain with? What do you got to leverage?
Well, and why do you think all these third-party vetting companies want your data too, right? It's valuable. They're spending thousands upon thousands of dollars getting their algorithms set up with AI, putting manpower and resources into this part of the business because this is where everything's going.
And Aaron, you mentioned AI. One of the first phone calls I got this morning was from a small motor carrier who, one of these vetting companies, they had told them, no, our AI says no. So people do not even make these determinations now. It goes through the algorithm, and you have all these things in place, or the AI just kicks you out and says, no, don't use this carrier. Just that simple.
Yeah, you're either flagged or you're not flagged. It's that simple.
That particularly strikes me as dangerous because we've already seen that the ability of an artificial intelligence to do anything depends on the information going in. And if that information isn't good, you could be knocked out for a reason that has nothing to do with you.
BS in, BS out. Yeah. And this particular individual, it was kicking him back on is because he has a physical address, which motor carriers are required to have a physical address on their MCS 150. Well, he also, because he's very rural, and he also has a P.O. box under his mailing address. And that one issue there, that P.O. box with the physical address, is what's kicking him back. And he's having a hard time getting loads because the AI is saying, hey, 2 different addresses, one's a P.O. box. This is a potential bad, scammer. And he's not, but and he's got many, many years of hauling for these same brokers that now won't load him because of this. That's another thing. You hear the brokers for so long, they would say, well, you got to have a good relationship with your brokers so that this fraud and all this crap doesn't happen. How's that good relationship benefiting you now?
Yeah, it's hard to develop a good relationship with the machine.
Yeah, and with folks on the other side of the table that don't play by the rules, that write their own rules, and there's no enforcement of the rules. Of course, that's another show.
Yeah.
Well, I'll speak on it right now because that's what I was going to talk about. This is an unpopular opinion with some, but I'll say it anyways. This is what you get when the feds have lackluster enforcement on the rules that are already in place and are late to the game. All these third-party vetting systems, this is a problem, and it's going to, and the problem's on the rise. And trust me, it's going to get worse, and it's going to accelerate in the upcoming years. I guarantee you that.
And I would agree with Aaron. It is something the feds, based on the way they do things, it made the industry ripe for this type of actions. And so you have private industry like these vetting companies that come in to try to, bridge the gap. But there's no regulation over these places. They just pretty much do what they want and, no consequences for it. The only consequences, the small carrier pays.
Yeah. And going along with what you said, Aaron, we've got a couple of problems there. Number one, government doesn't move quickly. Having worked my entire life in the private sector, I've dealt with government at times, and I always have to adjust my thinking to realize that I think in maybe days and they're thinking in years. They're not tech savvy. They aren't good at keeping up with the latest tech. And tech is moving faster than ever.
Yeah, it is. And, government is reactionary. They don't see things coming and get in the way of them. With all the fraud that's been in the last couple of years, they're still slow to act. If somebody calls me up and says they've been scammed, who do they tell? Unfortunately, you tell the feds, you could tell them, but they're not going to do anything. They don't have any ability to go after some of these scammers. A lot of it comes from overseas, and every once in a while you'll see a write-up of a scammer that got caught. But compared to the thousands and thousands that are out there, it's just a drop in the bucket that get caught.
I want to go back to something that you said, Tom, a little while back, and I kind of want both of y'all's take on this, and that is, you mentioned the harassing phone calls, that even though we've got all this tracking technology, that they're still calling carriers, sending messages like, why isn't the truck moving? Because they can tell if they're tracking you, and what are you doing right now, and so on and so forth. How big of a problem is this? I mean, it's always been a problem, but it seems to me that even with the tracking tech, it's actually gotten worse.
I believe it has gotten worse, and it is based on the fact that the broker can see if the truck's moving or not. And drivers are required, mandated by regulation, to take rest breaks, to take, certain off-duty periods. And when they're on their off-duty period, I mean, I'm not mad at them for not answering the phone. They're asleep. But, at the same time, this broker, well, you didn't answer the check call, so we're going to fine you. It's all about the dollar, and it's all about what the broker can keep and take away from the motor carrier.
Well, and I'm curious, you mentioned that, Tom, and guys, I mean, you are required to have 10 hours of not doing anything that benefits the motor carrier, even if you are the motor carrier. If you are answering these calls from brokers, does that technically disrupt your hours of service clock?
It's supposed to, whether or not you actively change to on-duty status because it's work-related is another, a whole nother separate issue. But yeah, it's supposed to. If you look at the interpretations in the FMCSR, and I have read them many times in my 16 years here at OOIDA, many, many times, there is one that says a brief phone call interruption does not necessarily interrupt your rest period. But let me tell you, if I'm sleeping, and like as you get older, I only sleep for maybe 6.5 hours a night. It's not the best sleep I've ever had. But if during 3 hours into that sleep, I got to wake up and answer a call from a broker that's just being an ass and calling me while I'm sleeping, why is the truck moving? And I got to explain to him, I don't go back to sleep that easy. That can interfere with my rest period, and there just is no consideration from these brokers. I mean, and they get pissed off if you don't return their call. They get pissed off if you don't answer, and it all equates to, well, they're going to fine you for this and they're going to fine you for that. They got tracking on my truck. Why do they got to call me? Well, that's a question you'd have to ask the brokers. Well, and keep in mind, if you kind of watch what Tom say, if you really listen there, he said brief. That's the key word to take from that. Most of the time, these phone calls are anything but brief.
Yeah, I can imagine.
What is brief classified as? 30 seconds, 2 minutes,
yeah, that's
10 minutes,
vague.
30 minutes?
But I don't know. If you wake me up halfway through my sleep cycle, my sleep time, I just don't, I'm not a switch. You can't just flip a switch and go back to sleep.
Yeah. Well, and, a lot of people complain about the fatigue problem, which I think is overblown in trucking, to be honest with you, looking at the actual federal statistics. But if you're concerned about that, why are you doing these things?
Yeah, no, that's true. And truth be known, the brokers, they're only concerned about themselves and their customers, and the motor carriers are just a vessel for them to, make money with. It's just, it is what it is. It's about the dollars.
Okay. Well, guys, it looks like we're running out of time. Is there anything else on this topic you think we need to get through to people?
The only thing I would like to say is, if everybody allows it to happen, it will. The only thing that will stop some of this stuff from happening is people saying, hell no, we're not going to do this. Otherwise, the brokers will take and take and take.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you very much. I certainly appreciate all the information.
Glad to be here, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark.
I've been talking with Aaron Lynch and Tom Crowley of OOIDA's Compliance Department about broker issues. And folks, if you have a problem or if you need help, call the Compliance Department at 816-229-5791. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibratech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at VibratechTVD.com.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide.
Vendor choice. Owner-operators rejoice.
Truckdown.com.
The move by both the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the California Air Resources Board to move the trucking industry toward the use of electric vehicles has generated a lot of anger and concern in trucking. With the change in administrations on January 20th, it's possible the EPA effort could be stalled out, but the California effort is still full steam ahead, and several other states are following their lead, including Oregon. You're listening to Landline Now, and I'm your host, Mark Reddick. Welcome back to the program. It's been known for many years that each state has a choice in emission regulations. They can follow EPA rules, or they can follow what CARB is doing. In part, that was something written into law at the time the EPA was created, since CARB predated its federal cousin. And that's why California's aggressive push towards zero direct emission vehicles is an issue with their neighbor to the north. Oregon, or more specifically the state's Environmental Quality Commission, adopted the rule back in November of 2021, and now that rule is scheduled to take effect in the state on January 1st of 2025, a scant few weeks away. Efforts have been made almost since the start to derail that action, or at least to delay implementation of the rule, and those efforts are still underway. One of the lawmakers who has made it her mission to oppose the Advanced Clean Trucks rule in Oregon is State Representative Shelley Bosshart Davis, who represents communities such as Albany, Millersburg, and Tangent, all south of the state capital of Salem. I spoke with Representative Bosshart Davis about the regulation, her efforts, and the potential effect on the trucking industry. This involves the Oregon Environmental Quality Commission's Advanced Clean Truck rules. And before we get into what's happening most recently on this, I'm wondering if you can kind of review what those rules are.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mark. And really, the clean truck rules are part of the greater CARB rules that are coming out of California. I'm sure people are familiar with that. And those rules were actually adopted in 2020 or last year, so early 2024. And so California is the first state to implement them. And there were three parts to this CARB Act. There's Clean Fleet, there's NOx, which is also called Omnibus, because we don't want to, not be confusing or anything. And then there's Clean Truck, which is really what we're talking about today. And the Clean Truck rules that are going into effect in Oregon, which is my state, is also going into effect January 1st, 2025, not just in Oregon, but in Washington, New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts. And those are the Clean Truck rules. Which state that between class 2B and 8, so when we think truck, a lot of us think your class 7 or 8 tractor truck, which is included in this, but it starts at class 2B, which is going to be your 3/4 ton or 1 ton pickup, that between 7 and 11% of sales in 2025 have to be EV, electric. So across the nation, most people are hearing that and saying, that won't work, which really leads us to kind of what people are freaking out about. If I don't have a better word about that, it really caught people off guard because that is the basis of it, that a certain percentage of sales in these states starting year 2025 have to be EV. And we know that that's either impossible or very, very highly unattainable.
I want to clear up something that may be confusing some folks. You, of course, are in Oregon.
Yes.
And you mentioned that these are rules created by CARB, the California Air Resources Board, and folks are very accustomed to each state making their own rules. Why is Oregon and why are these other states just adopting what CARB is doing?
Well, that's a whole long discussion, right? Why are they doing that? And if you notice, these are all Democrat-led states. And so years ago, EPA allowed for you to either follow EPA or follow CARB, which is California. And they did it, and it kind of goes against the exact reason why they did it. They did it so that there's not a patchwork of rules and every state's adopting different rules across the country, which trucks that are driving across the country would have to follow all these different rules. But it still leads us with this semi-patchwork. So you can either follow EPA or you can adopt CARB rules. And that's what we're talking about today. And so why are they doing it? Why is Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Washington, Oregon, and 5 other states that are adopting in 26 and 27? I don't know. For some reason, they want to push on environmental rules harder than the EPA standards, which you could debate that all day long, but if it's not attainable, then all it is costly, and it makes people lose out on business, and it makes people move states, and it makes people choose differently, and it hurts people in our states where they're just going to choose to do business elsewhere.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, since the initial rule was put in place by California, they've made several amendments, and Oregon appears to have adopted those amendments. Can you give us just an example or two of what these additions are?
They're really small amendments. There's two. When I mentioned the omnibus / NOx earlier, Oregon did delay that 1 year. They said they weren't ready for it. And I would say also that for the same reasons we aren't ready for NOx, the omnibus rule, we're also not ready for the clean trucks for exactly the same reasons. But when you say they adopted some amendments, they did, but they're very small. Like, for example, instead of a 1 year ability for manufacturers to make up for the 7 or 11% EVs, they're allowing 3 years. So that's just one example of a small amendment that they're doing, which I would push back on that and say, what a huge risk for dealerships and manufacturers to take. If it's not attainable this year, then why would we think that in 2 or 3 years that all of a sudden we're not only going to make up for the 7% in 2025, but we're also going to make up for the 10% in 2026 and the 15% in 2027, because it continues on an upwards trend. The 7% of EV sales that need to happen in 2025 is just 2025. It steadily goes up until 40% in 2032. 40% of new truck sales in 2032 have to be EV according to these CARB rules that those 5 states and more have adopted.
And there's a real problem just being able to buy these electric trucks, much less the other concerns that many truckers have with them. I mean, there's not a great deal of availability, is there?
No, there's not. And if I were able to just talk about the tractor sales, Class 8 tractor sales in Oregon, I have those numbers. In sales in 2023, they sold a little over 1,700 Class 8 tractors. And of those, 9 of them were EVs. 9. And so you have to get to, just to match sales last year in 2023, you would have to sell 120 EVs just to make that 7% standard in that first year. So when I say it's not attainable, the infrastructure is not there. And we all know this. The infrastructure is not there. They're too expensive. They don't work. They don't haul the capacity that we can haul in Oregon. Our max capacity is 105.5, and so they're not rated for that. So just the application of these over-the-road trucks don't work. And this is actually almost funny, but it's true. In Oregon, we only have one commercial supercharger that can charge these trucks in a commercial basis. It's located in Portland. One. And its uptime is 50% because of all of the stealing of the copper wires internally. So to say we're not ready and don't have the infrastructure is really an understatement.
I want to take a step back here for a moment, because you do have a direct connection with the trucking industry and experience in that industry. And I think that plays a lot into your passion for the issue and your knowledge about it. Can you just talk briefly a little bit about your connection to trucking?
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Very proud of that. And when we say why I'm passionate about this, it's one of the reasons why I went into politics when I was asked to run for office in 2018. And I grew up in, basically, I grew up in a truck shop. I say all the time, my dad started Boss Art Trucking with 2 trucks and a dream back in 1983. And he and the family and incredible team members and employees grew that business to 35 trucks, which myself and a business partner purchased about 6 years ago. So we run 35 trucks now here in the Pacific Northwest, mostly Oregon, Washington, and mostly agricultural products, a lot of drayage. But like I said, mostly ag products. And so I come into the legislature and sit on the transportation committee with the knowledge of how trucks work, how logistics work, what the supply chain does, and how hard it is to get it up and running again when one of those links gets broken, which we saw during COVID, which we see in different applications. But I really speak transportation because I've lived it my entire life. And I know the incredible work that truck drivers and how professional they are. And they just want to do their job. They want to support their family. And for some reason, Oregon makes it so dang hard for people to just want to do those things. And so that's the passion behind it. But it's also, transportation is very complicated. And so when I bring this up, I'll talk to a fellow legislator and they'll say, no, I'm pretty sure that Oregon delayed that. And I'll say, no, that was NOx. They delayed NOx in October, not clean truck. And they're like, well, what's the difference? And so it's and that's just one little piece to it. Transportation is very complicated. And so it's a tough conversation to have within the legislature when you don't have that kind of background.
Drawing on that background, and I know you've made some of the points that are pertinent to this, but what do you see the practical effect on the trucking industry would be, assuming that this thing actually does go into effect as it's written now?
We know kind of, bigger companies buy lots of new trucks, right? And then a few years later, they sell those. Smaller companies buy up those trucks. And there's just kind of this natural attrition to doing so. I think that if this goes into effect, the irony of this is that companies will hold on to older trucks longer because they can't buy new trucks, right? So we know that dealerships here in Oregon do not have 2025 new trucks on the lot. They just don't have them. So companies are looking at, well, what do? Do you purchase out of state and bring them in? That's debatable on whether we can do that, whether the manufacturers will get fined, whether dealerships out of state will get fined for that and bring them back in. Or do you hold on to used vehicles longer, which I think will affect the market across all sizes of companies. And like I said, the irony is that you're holding on to older diesel machines longer instead of being able to buy the cleanest diesel, most efficient trucks out there, which I think is the irony of this. And that's just talking about the side trucks, the heavy duty over the road. It also affects our dealerships. What do they do? Are they able to hold on long enough until we figure this out, whatever that question is? I think that's a big deal. Why would we put our dealerships into this problem where that affects our local community, affects jobs, it affects the relationship with our truckers in this industry? And then also, I believe truly that we're dealing with old data, not recognizing new trucks on the road. And we know if we compare the new truck compared to like a 1985 engine, they're not the same truck, right? The trucking industry has come a long way in reducing emissions, reducing NOx, reducing particulates, and it's not recognized. And I think truly that that's not fair, and that's how it's going to affect the industry in the future. And not just like we're talking about logical, realistic things. I don't think that the trucking industry gets the credit that they deserve, both in manufacturing and how far they've come with reducing emissions, but also the general public. And I'm just speaking from Oregon. I don't know if this is like this in other states. We certainly don't have the respect that they deserve. And they're looked down upon both inside the legislature and on our roads. And I think that's extremely unfair.
I've been talking with Oregon State Representative Shelley Bosshart Davis. We'll have more of that conversation after a short commercial break.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Before the break, I was talking with State Representative Shelley Bosshart Davis of Oregon about her effort to either stop or delay the implementation of CARB regulations for large trucks in her state. We now continue that conversation in progress. The Oregon Environmental Quality Commission was scheduled to meet on November 21st, and as I believe that they actually did conduct that meeting, and it was regarding this exact topic. Can you tell us what happened there? Did they make any significant decision regarding the advanced clean truck rule or anything else related to it?
Well, I was there. So I actually showed up in person, and I will say that I was pleasantly surprised with how many people showed up from the industry, both in like OBI was there, which is our business and industry kind of coalition. Charla was there. She spoke on behalf of kind of business in Oregon, but there was also tow truck companies there explaining we have companies in both California and in Oregon. And let me tell you what happened in California and how we lost business. Please don't let that happen here. We had people from the RV world that spoke about how it's unattainable and how it caught them off guard. I mean, there's articles written, and I jokingly say, is it the RVs that are going to save us? Because they're the ones that are raising their hands saying, we can't do this. Nobody's buying an EV, an RV EV, right? And they just assumed, they knew that it was coming, but they just assumed they would be exempted. And so we heard a lot of people talk about how this is not attainable. Please delay it until we have more infrastructure, until we have more opportunity. They compared California to having a lot of funds available, resources available, and still they lost business. And here in Oregon, we don't have that kind of resources or money towards trying to improve the grid, improve the infrastructure. And so at that meeting, I was, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised how many people were there to speak against adopting these. You also had many pro keeping this in check, and that would be a lot of environmental groups that don't want to delay anything. They talk about diesel in Portland. They talk about not delaying this at all so that they would keep everything there. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of debate among commissioners and they adopted the rules. So I still think that there's opportunity. I still think that we need to follow like what's happening, what's coming into Oregon. I don't think this is the end, but that's what happened on that in the actual meeting.
One of the things that, as I understand it, that they also did here is in trying to ease the transition here, they proposed what they called a suite of compliance flexibilities regarding the advanced clean truck regulations. What sort of flexibilities did they propose?
You know, we talked earlier a little bit about increasing from 1 to 3 years. They also talking about purchasing credits. So one thing that they say is the flexibility part of things where you can increase your sales by purchasing credits. So for example, Ford trucks. So we'll just talk about the Ford brand. You talk about just theirs. And so they sell F-250s, they sell F-350s, but they also sell Ford e-Transit vehicles. So that's going to be like your like Amazon type delivery truck, where they can sell an EV version of it, where they stop in the same location. So that application might work with an EV vehicle, right? I've also heard anecdotally that they don't like them, that they're kind of forced to buy them, they're forced to use them. Regardless, they do sell those. So they can sell a lot of those EV transits and then use those credits for being able to sell their F-250s, F-350s, right? So among the class 2B through 8 rigid trucks, not your tractor trucks, but your rigid trucks, you can transfer credits. And so that's one of those flexibility parts that they say will be able to help people comply. But that doesn't work everywhere. Like we talked about RVs, tow trucks, they're not selling other options where they can then just transfer credits. So they're going to have to go out onto the market and quote unquote buy credits somewhere. How do you do that? How much does that cost? How does that affect the end price into Oregon or any of these other states? I don't know the answer, but I'm going to suggest that it's not cheap. So that's one of those quote unquote flexibilities that they adopted so that they're like, no, you can absolutely do this. You can shift those sales between vehicle classes and everything will be fine. But those class 8 tractor trucks are in their own bucket where they can't transfer those credits. So they're stuck. They can't transfer any sort of credits. We know that people aren't buying EV class 8 tractors. And so that's one of the major problems in this rule.
You had written a letter regarding this entire situation that's gotten a lot of press coverage. I'm wondering if you can just tell us very quickly who you wrote the letter to and what basically the letter was about.
Yeah, thanks. I wrote from my office, from my state representative office, and I sent it to Chair Donegan and the members of the Oregon Environmental Quality Commission. And I basically lined out what it is, explained what it is. And then I talked about affordability, feasibility, demand, explained in California how in the heavy duty truck market in California, that market dropped 70% as they tried to figure out exactly how to do this. And again, we talk about how California had these huge efforts to fund grants, encourage investments, and they still had a 70% decrease. And we know that that didn't happen across North America. It wasn't like there was just a huge decrease in truck sales. It did happen in California. So then you think, well, what are they doing? What's California doing? Are they just holding on to trucks longer? Are they buying them from out of state? And from what I've heard, there's no real way to track that. In fact, one of the tow truck companies that I've been talking to, they say there's no real metric on tracking how many are being sold. So they don't even know if this is working, not working, because they're not tracking the information. So back to the letter, I asked, literally, I said, these states have delayed it. These states, there's even 3 states, let's see, Massachusetts, there's Massachusetts, North Carolina, and one other state that they originally adopted it a few years ago. They realized it's not feasible and they pushed it off indefinitely and just said, never mind, we're just going to follow EPA. We're not ready. It's not feasible. And then, like I said, 5 other states delayed it to 26 and 27. We're only one of a handful that are starting in literally less than 30 days. This is going to go into effect here in Oregon. And so I asked for a 1-year delay. Let's at least hold on to this. I would prefer that it go away. We just need to adopt EPA, but at least let's delay it so that we can give a chance to talk with the manufacturers and see what we can do. And I can tell you right now, people do not want EV over the road trucks. I mean, it doesn't happen. We know that it doesn't happen. I talked to a manufacturer just, 2 weeks ago, and he told me a specific example of a company that said, let me test out your EV. Let me test it out. I don't want to talk manufacturers or anything specific, which dealership, but this particular trucking company, this one route, and it was less than 80,000 GVW, so it wasn't a weight problem. They typically, this particular route typically made 2.5 round trips a day. So every other, couple days he's away. That was the particular route. With the same haul he made with an EV truck, he couldn't even make it 1 round trip. 1 round trip. Couldn't even make it 1 round trip. So when we talk about the application for over-the-road trucks, it just doesn't work.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time and for all the information. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
That was State Representative Shelley Bosshart Davis of Oregon talking about her effort to either stop or delay the implementation of the state's Advanced Clean Trucks Rule, which is based on CARB regulations. You can keep track of developments in Oregon by going to the website landline.media. Under the news menu, click on News by State. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.